there's a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. NASCAR has been aggressively pushing to get racing back on track by mid to late May, and now it sounds like some local governments might be on their side. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Lots of exciting things to talk about on today's episode, but before I get to all of that, I want to talk about something extremely exciting that's happening on this very YouTube channel in just a couple of days. This Thursday, I, as well as the very talented Podium Esports team, will be hosting the first ever race in the Icebox Pickup Throwdown iRacing Truck Series. Over the next 5 weeks, many of your favorite real-life NASCAR truck and Xfinity Series drivers will be competing for real cash prizes, and the races will be broadcast right here on my YouTube channel. This is very exciting. Jordan Anderson, who's been on this channel a handful of times, as well as Austin Wayne Self, are among those organizing the whole thing. I'm just excited to be a piece of this puzzle. It's my first time ever hosting any sort of iRacing, or really hosting any sort of anything, so I'm a little nervous. It's pretty exciting, but this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be going live right here. It'll also be on twitch.tv/Podium Esports, so you can watch it in either place, and it's going to be awesome. Jordan and Austin, of course, will be participating in the event, as well as a bunch of other drivers. I know Harrison Burton, Todd Gilliland, Ty Majeski, Brett Moffitt, Tyler Ankrum, Tommy Joe Martins, Derek Kraus, Angelo Ruck. I'm gonna miss some names. Spencer Boyd, I know he's also gonna be participating, plus many more drivers. Be sure to go on Twitter or Instagram, tag your favorite truck or Xfinity Series driver, and we'll see if we can continue to add to this already pretty stacked field. But you know, the Cup Series has the Pro Invitational, which is getting a lot of press, a lot of attention, but I feel like the NASCAR Truck Series guys, the Xfinity Series, I mean, the Truck Series in real life is often the best show of the weekend. I feel like those guys deserve their own special event that gives them a chance to really compete for something that matters. These races give away real money, and so I'm excited to be a part of something that is going to kind of shine a light on the Truck Series guys and the Xfinity Series guys. I think that's going to be really, really cool. So yeah, first broadcast will be at the virtual Texas Motor Speedway right here on this channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Time this Thursday in just a couple days. Hope to see a whole lot of you there. I'm excited. It's going to be something completely different. I've never done anything quite like this before. I'm learning a lot on the fly. Anyway, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time here at the beginning of this episode promoting that because I am hyped for it. The Icebox Pickup Throwdown iRacing Truck Series starts this Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on this YouTube channel. Now, let's get to the news because there have been no shortage of headlines the last couple days. I know I just spent some time promoting virtual racing, iRacing, but I know everyone is itching to see real race cars back on the real racetrack as soon as possible. I know everyone's missing that. And over the last day or two, we have seen a light at the end of that tunnel. A very faint light perhaps, but there is finally a light somewhat visible at the end of this tunnel. We've survived more than a month now without real-life NASCAR racing action, but now, several racetracks, it sounds like, are kind of trying to outbid each other to be the first racetrack to see racing return. Now last week, NASCAR officially postponed the May 9th race at Martinsville, but NASCAR for a while now has been looking at the Coca-Cola 600 May 24th as a possible return to real racing. Now it sounds even likelier that NASCAR will be returning sometime in May. However, it doesn't sound guaranteed that it's going to be Charlotte Motor Speedway or the Coke 600. There are a few other tracks NASCAR is looking at for various reasons that could actually be the first race out of this hiatus, and we're going to talk about all those options and some of the obstacles that surround a few of them. So firstly, the big news yesterday is that the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, actually came out and tweeted his support of NASCAR returning to the Texas Motor Speedway. Remember, Texas Motor Speedway had their March 29th Cup Series race postponed. The governor's tweet read, "Just spoke to NASCAR leaders. They're working to return to Texas at Texas Motor Speedway very soon. I hope to announce the exciting details in the near future. To prevent the spread of COVID-19, it will be without fans, but they will put on a great show for TV." The without fans part, I'm sure, is disappointing to many of you. I know it's disappointing to me, but it's something I think we're going to have to kind of learn to live with, at least over the next couple of months, likely at least through the early summer. Probably not going to see many sporting events of any kind in the United States with full stands full of fans. So disappointing, but not shocking. But very interesting to hear that the governor of Texas has basically given NASCAR the green light to return to the Texas Motor Speedway whenever they can figure a date out. Texas Motor Speedway President Eddie Gossage released a statement. Part of it read, Texas Motor Speedway will work aggressively with the sanctioning bodies and TV networks to give American society, as well as people around the world, a positive distraction during this crisis. A non-spectator event is not perfect because in our sport the fans come first, but circumstances are such that this is a novel answer for the return of the sport for now. We are now working on a hard date. Now, I talked about this in a video a week or so ago. The Athletic got a hold of some of NASCAR's kind of possible revised 2020 schedules, and one of the most likely cases showed Texas being run June 7th as part of a doubleheader weekend with IndyCar. IndyCar would run June 6th, Saturday night, and the NASCAR Cup Series would run Sunday, June 7th. It sounds like that still is the most likely option. Now, is it possible that NASCAR would race at Texas Motor Speedway before June? It is, but I think it's relatively unlikely, and we'll go into that here next. So as of early this week, it's Tuesday, as of the time I'm filming and uploading this, President of Charlotte Motor Speedway is still very hopeful that they will be able to run the Coca-Cola 600 on May 24th as scheduled, and they still seem like they're holding on to some bit of hope, some semblance of hope that they could run it with some number of fans in the stands. I think that part is almost entirely impossible, unlikely, but May 24th as a date set for the Coke 600 is still a possibility. Now, the state of North Carolina is still under a stay-at-home order through at least the end of April. It's unclear whether or not that's going to be extended, but that is important because as long as that order is in place, NASCAR teams and crews cannot go to the shop and work and prepare on race cars. So right now all the shops are pretty much quiet and silent at the moment. Now, a spokesperson for the governor of North Carolina released this statement: "The governor knows the importance of NASCAR to our state, and he's already been talking with track and team owners about how we could potentially restart racing. It's too soon to predict specific decisions about future sporting events, but any plan would prioritize public health and safety, preventing spread of the virus." Now, it does sound like NASCAR and its race teams have been lobbying pretty hard with local North Carolina government officials to try and, at the very least, get some of their race shops back open so that crew members can go back to the shop and start preparing race cars for one of these upcoming various racetracks. I've seen multiple reports that say most NASCAR teams have already prepared cars for Homestead Miami Speedway and Atlanta Motor Speedway. Those are the first two races to be postponed by the virus. So in theory, if NASCAR were to return to one of those racetracks first, teams would have less preparations to make. So maybe North Carolina could hold off on easing those restrictions longer. But if NASCAR is seriously considering going to a track like Charlotte first, they're going to need to get these crew guys back in the shops early enough so that they can make preparations to their race cars and everything they need to do to be ready. So I've mentioned Texas, I've mentioned Charlotte. How about Darlington Raceway? Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal tweeted yesterday, NASCAR is considering running its first race back in mid-May, potentially one weekend before the Coke 600, and some teams are pushing for it to be at a track within driving distance of Charlotte. One of the driving distance options now being considered is Darlington. Darlington is less than 2 hours away from Charlotte, North Carolina, down in South Carolina. Now, this is interesting because the Southern 500, Darlington, is scheduled for September. That race is supposed to be in the first round of the NASCAR playoffs. Moving that race all the way up here to May, several months ahead of schedule, basically swapping with somebody, would be really interesting. I'm not sure how they'd get everyone to agree to that. Labor Day weekend is a big deal for Darlington Raceway, the Southern 500, and a playoff race this year? Would Darlington Raceway even be willing to swap dates or to move that far up in the schedule? I don't know. Especially because if they move their race up, no fans are going to be in attendance, more than likely. But if they wait until September, you never know. Maybe by September, fans could attend the race. Is Darlington Raceway really going to sacrifice that for the sake of this? I don't know if that's really likely, but who knows? At this point, I guess NASCAR owns Darlington Raceway, ISC, so I guess they can do whatever they want to them, and Darlington's just gotta play along. Anyway, that Adam Stern tweet mentions that teams are looking at racetracks within driving distance of Charlotte, North Carolina, and there are a lot of tracks within a few hour drive from that city. Just a quick look at Google Maps. Bristol Motor Speedway is about 3.5 hours away. Atlanta, another about 3.5 hour drive from Charlotte. And that's notable because it sounds like in the news, Georgia, the state of Georgia, is starting to relax some of their restrictions, so maybe a race at Atlanta Motor Speedway could happen sooner rather than later. I also said earlier, teams have already prepared their cars for Atlanta Motor Speedway. That might be the best track to make the return at. Anyway, Martinsville is also 2.5 hours away from Charlotte, but Virginia, they're under stay-at-home orders through like the beginning of June, so that seems unlikely for the time being. Darlington, I said earlier, it's already less than 2 hours away. Richmond's 4.5 hours up in Virginia. I'm not sure how that would work. Again, just like Martinsville, I suppose the stay-at-home orders through June kind of screw that up. But Daytona, even if we were on the second Daytona race, that's about a 7-hour drive. 6 hours is Talladega. I mean, if you want to do a super speedway race right off the bat, I mean, those not too far away either. That's a day drive. You could do that. It'd be tiring, but you could do it. Let me just say, it's a very good thing that NASCAR is able to get the entire West Coast swing out of the way before all this hit. They were able to do Vegas, Phoenix, Auto Club, all that stuff. They got that out of the way. Sonoma's in jeopardy. I've seen some reports that suggest Sonoma just ultimately could be canceled. It could be the first race canceled as a result of all these hiatus and suspensions, which would be an absolute shame, especially for Speedway Motorsports, but it's just so far out there, such an outlier. It's kind of a wrench right now in the whole schedule. So I've mentioned a few tracks now that are kind of lobbying for NASCAR's return. I mentioned Texas, which literally got the governor's blessing. I've mentioned Charlotte, which obviously is right there in the race team's backyard. Racing is integral to Charlotte, North Carolina culture. They're still waiting on a few moving pieces perhaps to settle down, but right now the May 24th Coke 600 still seems very likely. I've mentioned Darlington, which would be a really weird jump in the schedule, break a lot of traditions perhaps, but Darlington, just a couple hours south, that could be a real option. Let's throw Homestead Miami Speedway into the ring as well. Yeah, it's more like a 10-hour drive from Charlotte, North Carolina, so a little bit more of a logistical undertaking, but the mayor of Homestead, Florida has also basically given his blessing on having NASCAR return to the Speedway. He'd like to see that happen sooner rather than later, without fans in the stands, more than likely. And since Homestead Miami Speedway was one of the first races to be suspended, to be postponed, many of the Cup Series race teams at least have cars already prepared for Homestead Miami, so it wouldn't be as difficult for a lot of the race teams to get prepared for a race like that, even if it was on short notice. So throw Homestead Miami Speedway and also throw Atlanta Motor Speedway into the ring as well. Georgia's not sure what's going on over there with Georgia. Atlanta Motor Speedway could be another option. So right there, you got 5 tracks. Notably, all of them are intermediate tracks, but you have 5 tracks that are pretty much ready for NASCAR to return whenever NASCAR is able to figure out a schedule, figure out something with Fox, figure out whatever they need to figure out. You got 5 tracks there that are more or less ready to run races without fans in the stands. So now the ball is in NASCAR's court, and this is not an easy decision for NASCAR. This is not a just snap your fingers and let's go to Fort Worth this weekend and run at Texas. That's not, they can't do stuff like that. They have to give a lot of thought and a lot of consideration into this because there are a lot of new variables that they need to account for that I haven't even really been thinking of until recently, and I'm sure a lot of other fans haven't thought of. First and foremost, even if NASCAR runs these races without fans in the stands, there are still going to be at least a couple hundred people at the racetrack in relatively close quarters throughout the day or the weekend, however long these races last. I mean, even if it's just the Cup Series, you're talking 40 drivers, you're talking 40 crew chiefs, that's 80 right there. You're talking about officials, it's easily up over 100 at that point. And then if the teams bring their crew guys, which they're going to at least have to bring some crew guys to help set the cars up, easily you're jumping into the 200, 300, 400 range as far as number of people at the racetrack, even without the thousands of fans. And that could potentially be a health hazard, and different states, different local governments are going to look at that differently. Now it sounds like NASCAR is considering a few pretty radical changes to their procedures for this year if it means getting racing back on track sooner. I've seen them pitch the idea of no practices. They just run the race without any practice time. Maybe qualifying and racing on the same day. I've even seen it thrown around that they'd maybe take away live pit stops for a lot of these races, even Cup Series races, because then there's a handful less guys per team that need to travel each week that need to fill that space as well. It'll make the garage area a little bit less dense, at least less people in the garage area, which again, for health concerns, could be the only answer they have. But yeah, no live pit stops would mean NASCAR would kind of have like designated breaks in the action for teams to come in and make adjustments. It would be weird. It would be wacky, but you know, I had Jordan Anderson on the show or on the channel the other day during our pre-race Pro Invitational live stream, and he kind of said as much, that NASCAR has been in constant communication with a lot of the race teams, and at least from his perspective, he thinks there's a chance that no live pit stops will be the way to go for at least a short period of time. And it sucks, but it would obviously be temporary, especially on the NASCAR Cup Series side of things, but temporary measures sometimes are needed because right now, what NASCAR needs more than anything from a business standpoint is to get back to the racetrack and run these races and show them on national television. They need Fox and NBC to be showing these races, because if they do that, NASCAR gets paid, the teams get paid, the drivers, the crews, they all get paid, the tracks get paid. If they can run races and get them televised on national TV, everyone gets paid most of the amount they need, and everyone can survive. The sport will survive if that happens. So that's what NASCAR needs. They just need racing to happen and to be broadcast on TV. But another thing to factor in here is even if NASCAR goes this way and they still have a couple hundred people at the track, they're going to need to have some sort of testing, some sort of safety net in place, some way to screen those people each weekend to make sure there's nobody infecting the entire group. I mean, that's something you'd have to seriously watch out for. And what happens if a crew member or a driver show up and they are sick? Do you send them home? Do you send everybody home? Do you send the entire team home? Do you postpone the entire race? What happens if you send that driver home? What if Joey Logano shows up to the track sick? You send him home, you still run the race, how does that affect Joey Logano in the points? Does he still get driver points for that weekend? Does he lose his playoff eligibility? I mean, there's a lot of questions that remain to be asked, because that's all I'm saying. One person shows up to the track sick, and this whole thing could get blown up just like that, just as quick as it did a few weeks back. So there are a lot of contingencies, a lot of things that NASCAR is going to need to plan for. The racetracks are going to need to plan for them as well. So that's why this is not just a snap decision overnight. NASCAR says, hey, we're returning racing next week. Let's do it. This has to be done well in advance, and there has to be a lot of thought behind it. It is not an easy decision. I do not envy the position that the Steves are in, or anyone in the high up executive parts of NASCAR are in right now. This is a tough decision to make, because even what seems like the right answer right now could easily, like I said, get blown up the first race they try to run. There are a lot of very unique questions, but like I said a few moments ago, the number one most important thing to NASCAR right now from a business perspective is to run some sort of real races on TV, get them broadcast by Fox and FS1, because if that happens, everyone gets paid. NASCAR gets paid, the drivers get paid, the crews get paid, the teams get paid, the sponsors are happy, the tracks get paid at least a good amount of money. The tracks still get most of their money from the TV deal. Ticket sales matter, but they don't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. As of last week, NASCAR is still insisting that they're going to try to run all 32 remaining NASCAR Cup Series races. They haven't been super specific about trucks or Xfinity, but I assume that means they're still hopeful they can run most, if not all, of those races as well. And that's important, because if you run races, you get paid. You don't run races, people don't get paid. And that's when bad things happen. And the thing to remember during all of this, and to just accept right here, right now, is that's not going to be fair for everyone. Some people are going to get shortchanged. Some teams are going to be put at a disadvantage. Some tracks are not going to get what they want. See Darlington, perhaps, if they lose their playoff and Labor Day race. Or Sonoma, if it gets canceled outright. I mean, some tracks aren't going to get what they want. Some people will be treated unfairly in this case, or will see themselves at an unfair disadvantage during this period. NASCAR is not going to be able to please everyone 100% fairly at this point. It's past that. This is an unprecedented time. But I'll say it again, right now what is most important for everyone, for the health of the entire motorsports, the entire NASCAR community, is that they run races at real racetracks and get them on TV. TV. You need TV. TV, they say TV is dying, cable is dying. Right now, it's the most valuable thing NASCAR has. They need to get on TV. Yeah, the Pro Invitational's on TV. That doesn't count. They need to fulfill their contractual obligations with Fox and then eventually with NBC. They need to run real races for points on TV. And if that happens, everyone's going to more or less be okay. They couldn't do that forever. They couldn't sustain these teams for years, but it will work in the short term. That's what everybody needs right now. So that is what's most important. Now, one big positive in all this, I'll end on a high note perhaps, is that if everything goes according to plan, if NASCAR does get back on the racetrack sometime in May, there is a very real possibility that they will be the first major motorsport in America to return to competition in some semblance of normalcy. NBA is shut down through June pretty much at this point. NFL season obviously doesn't start, still months away. Baseball, they're scrambling over there. Soccer, NHL, I don't know what's going on with any of those sports. Right now, if NASCAR is able to get back on the racetrack and IndyCar and all those other motorsports are able to get back racing, even if it's without fans in the stands, even if it's not quite the same type of racing we're used to seeing, if they get back on national television at the real racetrack in May, I'm just saying there might be a few extra eyeballs tuning in. And in the long term, this could be big for NASCAR. This could be a big moment for them. This could be the 1979 Daytona 500 all over again in a way. I'm just trying to find the good in a bad situation, because this is not an optimal situation by any stretch of the imagination, but there is some potential long-term positives that could come out of it. NASCAR might be the only major sport on TV live here in a few weeks. I mean, that might be kind of cool. We saw how much play the Pro Invitational got when it hit TV. There was nothing for anybody to talk about. ESPN picked it up and did a whole segment on the Pro Invitational. That just doesn't happen very often. So that's all I'm saying. This could be big for NASCAR if they're able to get back on the racetrack in some form by May. But there's still a lot of things that have to go right, and a lot of things NASCAR has to plan for. So it's far from certain, far from guaranteed, but now it sounds like local governments are pushing for it as well. So multiple people now are on NASCAR's side. That's a good thing, and I'm sure fans, even if they're not able to be there in attendance, I'm sure a lot of fans will welcome the sights and sounds of a NASCAR race weekend once again. But I hope everyone is staying safe out there. Obviously, safety continues to be on the forefront of everyone's mind, so I hope everyone's doing well out there, but that's all I've got for today's episode. Woo, my mouth is dry and I'm out of water. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this episode. I appreciate your support. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, subscribe if you are new, and of course, a big thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. I hype them all up every single week, but truly, they deserve it. If you want to support the channel, support the show, you can check out that top link down in the description. I really, really, really appreciate your support, especially during these uncertain times. It really, really does mean a lot to me. So thank you for supporting the channel on Patreon. I didn't forget about the The Icebox Pickup Throwdown iRacing Truck Series begins this Thursday. Remember, just 2 days, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this channel. I'll be hosting it, as well as the very, very talented Podium Esports team. They're the best in the business at these iRacing broadcasts. They've proven it time and time again during this hiatus. I'm excited to be working with them. I'm also a little intimidated, I'll be quite honest, but it's going to be awesome. A lot of your favorite Truck Series and Xfinity Series drivers will be participating with real money on the line, real prize money on the line. It's going to be awesome. So I hope you guys all tune into that, because I am extremely excited to see how it turns out. But thank you all a ton for watching this episode, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.